Well, hello and welcome, dear viewer. This mount, which is being preoccupied with my SWFA Fix 16X, was graciously sent in by Patreon provider Nick. Nick, thank you very much. Now, if you're a fan of my channel and you've watched my mount videos before, usually I go over the mount before I mount an optic in it to do its resetting test to then talk about it afterwards. Clearly, I've already done that, so I'm starting this out a little bit backwards. However, the reason why I left the optic in the mount is to show you something. To show you a flaw. Not in the optic. No, this SWFA Fix 16X is fantastic. But there's one thing about this mount which I was unaware would be an issue until it was. And that's this. As you can see, this is the cocking lever to disengage the claws on the bottom. And it works very similar to a Bobro, except it's vertical, not horizontal. You disengage the springs, which you can feel on this lever is very, very strong, and you lift it up to have it engage on the pick rail. Very simple and usable system. But there's a flaw. And the flaw is this lever. As you can see, they did angle it so it stays away from the tube for the most part. But like I said, this is a very, very stiff spring. And when you go to release this, it comes back with a vengeance. And if you don't let it go softly as it possibly can, it can and will deflect inward. What do you think happened to me on numerous occasions? It made contact with the side of the optic. That's right. You see that mark right there? That is a dimple on the side of this tube because I put this on and I slammed this up and I heard a loud thunk and went, what the hell is that? I then got behind the optic and saw it's not perfectly zeroed anymore. I wonder if the base is a problem. So I disengaged it, did my usual thing, put it back on, let this thing slam home and went thunk. What the hell is going on? I did it a couple times, way too many times for me to be proud of, before I realized it's fucking destroying the side of the tube. How much, you might be wondering? Brace yourselves. It makes me want to fucking crawl into a hole and die. I can't believe I did that again. But whatever damage has been caused to this SWFA by this mount is, guess what? Already been caused. Because I had this thing on there, mounted up perfectly fine, slammed it home, and you'll watch as you'll see very soon enough, the windage just goes, and then you reset it and goes, okay, there's something wrong. And there is. This lever is what's wrong. Right off the bat, it sucks. I'm sorry. There's nothing wrong with having any other style QD mount. You want to have an ADM with levers on the side? Perfect. Oh yeah, buddy. Oh yeah. Sneak peek on that one, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have a LaRue handy, but again, those just rotate and they're great. Or what I've come to realize are probably my favorite, the GG&Gs, this giant lever that is, it's not spring loaded. You're not going to destroy anything, but you have a lot of leverage on this thing and a nice little hook that you can go click. Okay. Click, it's locked. Oh, you want to disengage it? Okay, let's go. I take this off my Ruger American Ranch and I throw on my Miopta 3-18. And you know what? I have a double duty rifle now. 1-4 is perfect for close engagements, and the 3-18 is great for everything else in between. And they hold perfect zero. They're GG&G, if you're listening, which I highly doubt, make these in 34, please, so I could run something a little bit more massive on a gun that I absolutely don't have a need for. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. We're not talking about GG&G, we're talking about PRI. And this is the PRI Gator. And I wonder how it got the name Gator. Maybe because this thing snaps so hard it could break your finger or damage your tube. With that being said, I'm now going to remove the optic from the mount, which, by the way, is backwards, but this way I can actuate this while it's on my mount and still be able to get this thing lined up properly. Now that my baby is out of the mount, you can see the carnage right there. This is deep. Even though I don't have any fingernails currently, it's still getting caught in there. Let's see if you can, yep, you can see how deep that thing is. heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. Let's put that out of harm's way, out of the way of this PRI Gator mount. Oof! Stupid me. But look at how much farther this thing can go. Let me hold this thing somewhat correctly. It goes just enough to get in the line of the tube in these rings. These are, of course, 30mm rings. I believe these are of the medium height variety, because as you can see here, these are clearly lower. And guess what that would do? That would put this even farther into where the tube is going to be seated. So, something to take into consideration. Now, some of you might be going, well, when you put it on, you're supposed to let it slowly come up. But guess what you have to do that? You have to have a finger in between this ridiculously hard to cock lever and the tube. And what happens if it catches you off guard and you go and you break your fingertip? I don't know if it's strong enough to break your fingertip, but you know what? I don't want to find out. Not only that, in my testing, which we're going to get to very soon, when I would, after I figured out what was going on, I would let this up nice and slow so it wouldn't make contact with the tube, and it just didn't seem like it was locking in position properly. So I'd have to wiggle it around and finagle this a little bit to get it to where I felt like it was fully secured. It's just not a great system. Anytime you have to worry about something that's going to interfere with something else that's kind of important, delicate, expensive, and or, well, I already said important. I also said expensive. So yeah, there you go. I just don't really agree with that. I'd much rather, like I said and showcased a couple of other mounts, I'd much rather be out of the way completely, because this way you don't have to worry about anything interfering negatively. All of this. Anywho, what do you get for your $200 or so? That's what these cost. You get, besides a possible finger breaker or a tube denter, you actually have a fairly nicely machined mount. Everything about this thing is basically modular. It's really cool that you can buy different height rings, space them out however you want, depending on how big your optic is. For example, a USO MR10 has a really big erector housing, and I couldn't run it on any of my ADMs. I had to run that on separate rings, so this way I can clear the actual erector housing. It was huge. This would have been an awesome mount to have, because I could just move this a little bit farther forward to have it clear that and get perfect distance on it. The overall machining on this seems pretty nice. The anodizing is smooth enough to not really show many marks on my fingernail, which should make this fairly easy to clean. We do have some marks over here, but that looks like it was scratched into the anodizing. As far as the locking system, we've already gone over that. This thing is very, very tight. There are springs in here that push these over, so this way it's all 100% spring pressure. To have you see and hear what that sounds like when you put this on an actual rail, it goes like that. And it's on there really, really tight. Because we're relying on springs, there's no lever mechanical advantage that we can adjust. So if you're worried about springs loosening up or failing over time, especially on something really heavy recoiling, this might not be for you. However, it does go on there really, really tight. We do have two very large positive locks for our pick rail, and they are on the claws, which are steel. These are about 1 inch or so long. I like how it locks up. I mean, you could see there's almost no play once it gets in between the pick rail, which is awesome. The less play you have, the better, in my opinion. But you're always going to push forward and let that slam forward. If you let this thing come up slowly, which again, now you have to use a finger that's going to come in between. Whoop. You could also slide off. It doesn't feel like it goes on all the way. You see how much play there is in this? If we let this slam, well, I guess there's still the same amount of play, but it just doesn't feel like it engages on the pick rail as much as I would like. Again, because once this is in, you can't push this lever to make it any tighter. Not only can't you push it because it can't disengage springs anymore, but you're going to be hitting your tube. So you kind of have to wiggle it around and hope that it, settles itself in. Now, the real donkey kick to the groin is the weight. It's pretty apparent from, the general construction of this thing and the sheer size of it that it is going to be heavy. But this is basically 3 ounces heavier than, I don't know, an ADM Recon, for example. ADM Recon is just around 8 ounces. These are just around 11. 3 ounces is a lot of weight. And keep in mind, these are 34mm rings, not 30. Yeah, I know, this top ring does have the footprint for a micro red dot, but nevertheless, it's still really heavy by comparison. Now, Nick did provide another set of rings like I showcased earlier. You can buy these for about 40 bucks a set, which is fairly cheap. ADM clamshells, these guys are like $60+. Really, really expensive, and they're basically the same. Like we touched on earlier, one nice thing is having the adjustability on this to be able to slide this however you want. But as you can see, there is a little bit of play. You can't make this too tight or too precise because that would prevent this thing from moving whatsoever, and if it's not perfectly straight, you could damage the tube. So there could be more ways to damage the tube. Not cool. The instructions somewhere say, don't do this, but guess what? You might accidentally do that and have it slipped up, and you're going to damage, you're going to damage a potentially very expensive optic. Yes, this is only 300 bucks, but what happens if you're putting a $3,000 optic in this? And what happens if you send that optic in to get repaired and they see that mark and go, oh, we're not Vortex or Leupold or Trijicon. That's going to cost you a lot of money to repair. It's a potential for a massive, massive headache, one that I've never seen before on a mount. With all that being said, let's see how well this thing returns to zero on my tracking rig. I can already tell you, it's going to be an interesting video. Down here with the PRI Gator and the SWFA Fix 16X, as you can clearly see, we're lined up extremely well. I'm going to disconnect the lever. As you can clearly see, it is off. I'm going to push forward, let that slam home, and we are off by at least a click to the left and up. It's opposite of how it actually looks. Anyway, okay, that's a little interesting. I'm going to take it off. Move it around again, push forward, click up, and you can clearly see we're even farther off. Okay. Oh shit, it's actually denting the side of the optic. All right, that's a design flaw that I didn't take into consideration earlier. Yeah, that's gonna be showcased back on the tabletop. Fuck. Huh. Okay. All loose again. I'm going to now loosen this up. I'm going to let this slide home nice and gently. We're still off, but let's recalibrate this to zero. Because I wonder if by letting that lever smack the side of the tube, that it was pushing the erector assembly over. All right, let's try this again. Loosen it up, push forward, let this thing very gently not come out of your hand and smack your tube and dent it. No, you can clearly see we're still over. Let's do this 2 more times like this. Clearly loose. Forward, nice and slow. It's nice and tight on there. See, now that's lined up fine. We'll loosen this up again. Clearly loose. Forward, slow. Give it a little wiggle. Okay, that lines up good. So you got to be really, really careful with this thing in here, because if you're not, you're going to damage your tube like I just did, and that's not cool. So you see here now it's off again. Everything on this thing is very tight. I just checked that, but we're clearly off another 1/10 of a mil. So there you have it. The mount is really nicely made. I wish this was just clocked sideways. And guess what? It wouldn't be a problem. But I guess they don't want that lever protruding out to get caught on stuff. It's a give and take, folks. I just don't particularly care for this because there's too much room for either damage to your finger or damage to the tube of your optic. Other than that, it is very nicely made. If you want to have this mount come off on the side somewhere else, that's what this is. This is the base for this top ring, and this is the standard top ring for this base. So you could articulate that and have it wherever the hell you want. He just had it set up like this because I guess that's how he wanted to run it. But you can buy this and offset it however you want. I would like this a lot more, like I said, if this was just tilted sideways. Then it would be a really cool and awesome mount. And for 200 bucks, to give you the flexibility that this has and fairly inexpensive accessories, it would be a home run. Especially if you're looking for something heavier to mitigate recoil on a high recoiling rifle, or something that you really want to have a nice sturdy feel to. I wouldn't worry about this thing shifting These springs seem extremely tight, and these two big blocks are steel, and they lock into the pick rail really, really tight. So I wouldn't worry too much about lateral movement. Unfortunately, though, this lever is not, in line with the base. It's perpendicular, and you have to worry about breaking your fingertip, or like I've shown, damaging your tube. So ultimately, would I recommend this? No, I wouldn't. But you might be looking at this and going, I don't mind this, I'll be okay with it, it should be fine. In which case, I hope you have a great time with your PRI Gator mount. Nick, thank you so much for sending this in for review. This is a mount that I probably never would have purchased if it wasn't for someone like yourself sending it in, so I can get some footage on this thing and real world sort of usage to show all of you wonderful people. So with that, Nick, thank you very much. And thank you all very much for watching. As always, see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe Star subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you could still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.